Good evening, everybody. Kristen Roplat here, licensed acupuncturist in Santa Monica, California at Lotus East West Medical Center. And I'm here tonight to do my Huddle for Health on how to do heavy metal detox properly. I've had a lot of questions. I want to make sure that I can dispel some myths about, is it safe? Is it not safe? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do IV chelation? Should I not do it? All these questions come up over and over again. But I think the main things are, why is it so important that I take a look about whether or not I have heavy metals circulating in my system causing all kinds of things like inflammation, etc. Now I have a lot of notes here. I want to follow my outline so I don't get carried away and go off on a tangent. So I'm going to put my lovely glasses on that, by the way, match my outfit. Okay, so, I want to talk a little bit about, people say, wait a minute, I don't understand. I don't have any amalgam fillings. And so the amalgam fillings or silver fillings in your mouth are made up of about 50% of mercury. And so even though you may have had them for a while and then had them even removed safely by a holistic dentist, that does not mean that you are safe from having mercury stuck inside your body somewhere. Whether it's stuck in your joints, it's stuck in your tissues, it's stuck in your bones, or it's stuck in your brain. So I'm not going to just talk about mercury today, but I'm going to talk about lead and all kinds of other things that are very important and will definitely compromise you. But people say, well, where am I going to be getting these heavy metals from? And so we think of sushi. Who doesn't love sushi? We think of tuna. How many tuna sandwiches have you eaten in your lifetime, even if you're not eating them now? And when you go have sushi, of course you're going to have tuna sushi. Swordfish, vaccinations, anybody that's had a vaccine, especially 10, 15 years ago, it had thimerosal as a preservative, which is mercury. Anybody who is as old as I am, which means you're as old as the hills, haha, we had those thermometers that had the little mercury balls in them, and when they broke, we would take them out and play with them in our hands. And I've had countless people say, oh yeah, I used to play around with the mercury when I was a kid. How scary is that? Also, what are in pesticides that we are inadvertently exposed to? If somebody's spraying next door, or we've ever been in an apartment building that has had pesticides, or we've been in a farm with pesticides, we don't know what kind of heavy metals are contained in those. If anybody believes in, the spraying of chemtrails in the sky, we see a lot of those, things in the sky. Some people think it's garbage. Some people really believe in it. But I think it's very valid conversation anyway. And certainly, you think about lead, you think about, have you ever had a tattoo, and is that tattoo red? Have you ever used kohl eyeliner when, in the 1980s? Our parents, I'm going to be 64 in about 3 weeks, and my parents are from the lead generation. So they had leaded gas. It wasn't unleaded. It had full of lead. They had lead paint, etc. And so when you think about the possible traveling of heavy metals from the mother into the fetus for 4 generations, you have to really think about the fact, even if you're young enough to not have had any silver amalgam fillings in your mouth, did your mother have them? What were your parents exposed to? And I know that I had very high lead and very high mercury. Where did I get my lead? Well, I lived in a very old house that probably had lead pipes, but I also got lead from my mother because we had some of the very similar symptoms of lead poisoning. And so those are all the things that you consider, and all the things that when people come to see me, I take into consideration. In fact, when people come to see me, I have them fill out a neurotoxic questionnaire. And one of the reasons I do is because The whole left side of the page is all about symptoms that have to do with heavy metals, all right? So, what I think about when I think, about other kinds of heavy metal detoxes. Some people say, oh yes, I've used cilantro, or I used chlorella, or I've used this other, combination of things for a heavy metal detox. What I think about, or I used zeolite liquid, which is certain kinds of minerals. I think about the analogy of a street sweeper. So when when it cracks me up because, you can't park your car, right? It's street sweeping day, and you have a dirty street, and then you see this gigantic street sweeper coming down the street, and what does he have? He has this big broom thing in the middle, right, that's going around and around, and then he's taking the dirt, and the dirt is really just kind of getting stirred up all over the place. It's going to one side or it's going to the other side, and it's getting redistributed, but it's not exactly getting taken care of. And this is actually a very, very, very important part of detoxing heavy metals safely, is that you want to use a true heavy metal chelator. And a little bit later, I'm going to read the definition of what that means, but it means that it has a double molecule strong enough to capture that heavy metal, not weak enough to just pull perhaps some metal out of tissue, but not strong enough to get it all the way out of the body. That's really important. But I think that when I take a look at somebody and I think about, all right, are they strong enough and are their cells healthy enough to be able to detoxify heavy metals? This is something very, very important. If someone comes into my office, I take a look at the health of their cells, okay? And so I follow what is called the 5 R's of cellular healing. And that is something that Dr. Daniel Pompa, one of my great mentors, put together, the 5 R's of cellular healing. R number 1 is called remove the source. Okay, so I have to take a look at the patient and I have to figure out what are those things? What is upstream? What are all the things that might be making their body very sick, very unhealthy, and very inflamed? What is inflaming their cellular membranes? And I have to figure out those things that can definitely include heavy metals, and I have to find the most effective and safe way to take all of those things out of the body. Our number 2 is regenerating the cell membrane. So if you picture a cell, the cell's like this, right? And it has a membrane around it of very luscious fat. And then that cell has a lot of hormone receptors on the outside of it. They look like antennae. You don't want that cell membrane to be inflamed. If it is inflamed, those hormone receptors are blocked. The hormone receptors, all of you have heard me talk about it. You have hormone receptors for insulin. You have hormone receptors for the thyroid. You have hormone receptors for leptin, so that your body can get that leptin into the cell and tell your body to burn fat for energy. You have mineral receptors. You have vitamin receptors. You have hormone receptors. So as you can see, if your cell membrane is inflamed, then those hormone receptors are not working properly. But I think the most profound thing that happens also is that when the cell membrane is inflamed, your nutrients can't really get well into the cell to feed the mitochondria, and the mitochondria is where you make all your ATP energy. All right, so that's regenerating the cell membrane is R number 2. R number 3 is called raising cellular energy, and raising cellular energy so that that mitochondria works well, so that it can make ATP energy, so that it can help your body move the toxins out of the cell, so it can help create more glutathione, which is your master antioxidant. And without doing that, you're not going to help detoxify your cell inside and also get rid of all those free radicals. So that's really important. Our number 4 is called reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. So inflammation is going to be caused greatly by having the presence of heavy metals in your body. It will inflame your cellular membranes. It will inflame your gut. It will inflame your brain. So, and it will cause oxidative stress. It will create more free radical damage. And then, of course, our number 5 is called reestablishing methylation. Now, why is methylation so important? Methylation is really a key component to this thing called epigenetics, the study of how the good genes get expressed and the bad genes get turned off. So I was talking about glutathione that is made inside the cell. So glutathione and methylation work together to keep these bad genes turned off. But if you have a genetic tendency towards cancer or towards diabetes or, Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition of the thyroid, any kind of bad gene expression can get turned on if your methylation is lacking and your glutathione is lacking. And one of the main things that can take out your methyl groups and decrease your methylating ability is heavy metals. There's a lot of things. A lot of environmental chemicals can do that too. A lot of toxins can do that too. But heavy metals can do that. So heavy metals are an enemy to both methylation and your glutathione storehouses. Okay? Now, I want to talk about amalgam fillings, and I want to be very specific about my points of view about amalgam fillings. They are dangerous as heck. They are banned everywhere else in the world except here in the United States. And when I talk to people, I say I'm not exactly sure why a dentist would think that it would be safe to put in an amalgam filling into your tooth because it leaches mercury anytime it's even touched. Anytime you brush your teeth, anytime you drink anything hot or eat anything hot, anytime you eat anything cold, any disturbance at all is going to create outgassing, and you're going to have vaporous mercury going through your system, eventually mixing with your friendly bacteria, creating inorganic mercury, and then that just goes merrily on its way, crossing easily the blood-brain barrier and lodging into your brain tissue. Who in the heck wants that? But when you think about it, when they remove amalgams, they can't just throw them in the trash can. They have to use a toxic waste disposal. And I want to read this one thing that I think is really vital, okay? When you remove an amalgam filling, you have to collect it in a special container with what is called a no-touch technique. You have to seal it underneath water or use a special liquid so it doesn't off-gas and poison the environment of the dental office, and then you have to dispose it, and you have to have a special pickup, and it has to be characterized through testing, which this lab does as hazardous waste, and it is called toxicity characterization, leaching procedure, a T-clip analysis. Then it has to be disposed at a high-class 3 landfill that has special lining in it so that toxins don't leach out. And the leachate is captured and pumped and treated. So the amalgam filling is considered hazardous waste. Has to be disposed in a special landfill, etc., etc., etc. How frigging scary is this? How can any dentist or the American Dental Association ever look anybody in the face and say, these are safe to put in the human body? What I want you to do is when this whole little webinar is done, I want you to go to YouTube and I want you to watch this video. It is called Smoking Tooth, and it's on YouTube, and I think it's really, really very important to watch it, because on this video you will see with your own eyes how these mercury fillings outgas, and these are filling your system with toxic mercury. You can't get around it. Now, I have a lot of people saying, yeah, but that's fine. I'm fine right now because I got my amalgams. I got my amalgams removed safely by a holistic dentist, and that's great. I'm really thrilled that you did that. And there are definite procedures by which you have to have your amalgams removed. And you can only do one quadrant at a time. You can never cross the midline. You have to have a special dam. You need to have oxygen. Your whole body needs to be covered. I mean, it's a whole procedure. The dentist has to have a very special suction machine, and they have to have a very high quality air filter. And still, it's not going to completely keep you safe from mercury vapor, but you're going to be one heck of a lot better, doing that than, going to a dentist and having him yank it out without any protection whatsoever. Also, I have a pre and post amalgam removal protocol that I give to every single one of my patients before you go to get your amalgams removed, and then after you have your amalgams removed. It's very important that you do that so that you don't cause more damage to your system. But what I want to say to you is this. I don't have anybody start this procedure unless I feel that their body is strong enough and healthy enough and open enough in their detoxification pathways to be able to handle this detoxification, this heavy metal detoxification. So if a patient comes in and they're tired, they have a lot of symptoms, I really feel that they're deficient. What I do is I spend maybe 3 to 4 months building their body up before I ever even consider perhaps even doing heavy metal testing. And by the way, there is a heavy metal test that I do. It's from doctor's data. I do a heavy metal challenge test using a chelating agent. It's the only way that you can get really valid results. And I don't care what is on the internet. I've been using it for my patients for years. It's very accurate, and I feel very, very comfortable using it with patients. But again, you have to be in better health before I have you do this test, all right? Now, there are other considerations that I want to talk to you about in regards to heavy metals, and especially mercury. Dr. Daniel Pompa almost lost his life because inadvertently a friend of his who was a dentist replaced 2 amalgam fillings without doing the proper procedure and replaced those 2 fillings with gold fillings. But unfortunately, he had 6 more amalgam fillings in his mouth. And his body went through a process of galvanization. Okay, so this is what happens. If you get a gold crown or a gold filling, what you create is called a galvanic reaction. What happens is it changes the electrons essentially in the amalgam filling to allow the vapor to be released at approximately 2 to 10 times faster. Okay, so that means that some of you may have even currently gold and silver in your mouth at the same time. And so I read this little blurb because I wanted to make sure I got it correct. But I want to make sure that you know that galvanization is a very, very dangerous situation. So if you have this in your mouth, you must get your amalgam fillings removed immediately and properly. Please feel free to call my office, 310-828-8258. That's 310-828-8258, and get a if you're not already a patient of mine, get a free 15-minute consult, and I can give you some really good dentists here in California. One, Dr. Solario in Tijuana. I'm sure people are cringing right now, but he is one of the best dentists I've ever seen. Dr. Shiba in the Valley, Dr. Yokoyama in downtown Los Angeles, three of really excellent dentists. And I want to make sure that I can talk to you first and make sure that you're doing the pre and post amalgam removal protocol. All right? If you have children that you suspect have heavy metals, if you have a child that's on the autism scale, has Asperger's, etc., has learning disabilities, and you want to test them for heavy metals, there is a urine test called porphyrins test. And it doesn't tell you the specific metals that they have, nor does it give quantity, but what it does tell you is if they're having an autoimmune reaction to heavy metals that may be present in their system. So if you have a child that you want to have tested for heavy metals, this is a safer route to go. You can't do a heavy metal urine challenge test. It's just not a safe thing because you do have to take a chelating agent, and I don't like that idea. I want to address what I perceive as not the best way of going about and removing heavy metals from your system. I was talking earlier about the idea of using a true chelating agent and not just something that might be pulling but is not strong enough to pull all the way out of the body. So let's take zeolite liquid, for instance. Recent testing has revealed that zeolite will pull heavy metals, but unfortunately it will just dump them in your gut. And so then then that creates a lot of challenges with leaky gut, opens up your tight junctions in your gut, can wreak havoc with your system. So I don't suggest doing a zeolite liquid, as a heavy metal chelator. A lot of people over the years have used cilantro and chlorella. It's not that those things are bad, it's just that they are single bonded molecules and they are not strong enough. They're strong enough to pull, but in my opinion, and all the studies that I've read and all the years that I've done this, they just end up redistributing. They pull for a period of time, but they're just not strong enough to, in my opinion, cross the blood-brain barrier and pull it completely out of the body. What you need is to use a true chelator. For years and years, we used either DMSA or DMPS, and I know a lot of people go to their doctors and their doctors say, oh yes, you have heavy metal poisoning, I want you to do IV chelation. I want it noted up front, I do not like IV chelation. I know that doctors will do a heavy metal challenge test, a urine challenge test, and they might do a push of DMSA or DMPS. Then they give you 4 to 6 IV chelation treatments or however many they prescribe. Then they do another urine challenge test, maybe 3 to 4 months later, and say, oh my gosh, look, it's all gone. But what, in my opinion, they're not considering is that DMSA does not cross the blood-brain barrier, all right? DMPS does, but it's not, but you cannot possibly pull all the heavy metals out of your bones, the lead out of your bones, and all the mercury out of your brain in 3 months or 4 months. It's just not going to happen. It can't possibly happen. What they're looking at that test, and even when I do the heavy metal urine challenge test from doctor's data, what I'm looking at is the heavy metals that are in the body fluids, what is in the urine, what's gotten dumped into the urine. There is no test that will measure exactly how much lead is stored in your bone, how much mercury is stored in your brain. So even when you take that doctor's data heavy metal test, what I've been trained to do is take that number of mercury and multiply it by 4. And when you do that, that's quite stunning. And still, that's an approximate figure of what possibly could be lodged in your brain and in your body. So what ends up happening is with these IV chelation treatments also is it's like, as I say over and over again, it's like screaming fire in a crowded movie theater. Everybody starts rushing towards the exit, and once again, those heavy metals, they just can't all get out at one time. So they redistribute. So they may not be in your arm anymore. They'll go to your hip, or they'll go to your brain, or more will go through the blood-brain barrier into your brain. And so I get patients who've done IV chelation treatments, and then 6 months or a year later, they get the return of those heavy metal symptoms, and they can't figure out why. And also, I just really feel for some people, especially for those very weak and or very toxic people, especially the weak ones, the ones with a lot of symptoms and a lot of health concerns. When they come in and they go and they do an IV chelation treatment, what ends up happening is just wipes them out. Especially if you have leaky gut, especially if you have a toxic liver, especially if you have problems with your kidneys. And I'm not even talking about necessarily that those things show up on blood tests, but I'm talking about that symptoms indicate that you need to open up your elimination organs, okay, and keep them open so that you don't have the buildup of those heavy metals in those places, all right? I think that these are really key things. I want to talk a little tiny bit about, there's a specific products that I use that I think are really valid, and I use them on an on and off cycle. And the reason why I think it's really important for to do an on and off cycle is because your body, you don't ever want your body to get used to pulling heavy metals, because at a certain point your body's going to stop. It works on a pressure gradient, okay, from high pressure to low pressure. So your body will push some heavy metals out for a period of time, and then you need to stop and give it a break. And then you need to do this kind of back and forth thing. 4 days on, 10 days off. 7 days on, 7 days off. Whatever I feel as a clinician that is going to be the best thing for you. And the reason why I like to follow people closely on a heavy metal detox is that I can't just send them off and say, okay, go do it and check back with me in a year. No. I want to see people every week, every couple weeks, because there are symptoms that happen. Some people feel better on their on cycle. Some people feel better on their off cycle. There are things that I have to do. I have to, for some people, I have to put them through, some support for their liver or their kidneys during their on cycle, or vice versa. But I use a product called Cyto Detox Drops. And these Cyto Detox Drops are amazing because they are nano-sized. And they are nano-sized specific nano-sized minerals that have been worked on and researched by this genius gentleman who finally put this product together that will cross the blood-brain barrier, and it will pull mercury out of the brain, but very gently and nicely. Okay, we're not using DMSA anymore. We're not using DMPS anymore because those guys are chemicals. Cytodetox is not a chemical. It's natural substances. All right. The other thing that I use is a product by Systemic Formulas called Bind, and it has a very specific and very clean activated charcoal. You have to be very careful about the source of activated charcoal that you use, because it can also be tainted with heavy metals. So this Bind product is genius. And so what Cyto Detox does is it basically traps these heavy metals inside of a cage. That cage goes down into your liver and then and into your large intestines, where the bind captures it, okay? It binds to it, and it takes it outside the body. So there's a very specific way that I work with these heavy metals and heavy metal detoxification. And again, although I do use a lot of the same products for people, their protocols, their support protocols, the detoxification that they may have to do every month or every third month or every fourth month are very different. And so I look at, again, every person as an individual. Do I think that it is important to get heavy metals out of your mouth? Yes. I don't care how long they've been there. I don't care if you think that they're not doing you any damage. I can guarantee you they are. And over time, it is just a bad idea. So I can show you how to remove them safely so that it is not traumatic to your body. Perhaps some of you have tried to remove one or two and then you felt worse instead of better. And so I want to make sure that we get around all of these ideas. But I can tell you right now that it is a very important thing to take a look at. Our environment just keeps getting dirtier and dirtier and dirtier with things like Roundup, with glyphosate and all kinds of pesticides and the zillions of chemicals that we're exposed to every day. We just have to do everything that we can to get and rid our bodies of these things so our cells can start to work properly and thrive. And that's what I'm all about. If you don't heal a cell, as Dr. Daniel Pompa says, if you don't heal the cell, you're not going to get well. And that's been my whole premise for my practice. I've been practicing for zillions of years, it seems like, and I love practicing because I love seeing the transformation of somebody who comes in with heavy metal toxicity and what happens. So a lot of times people come in with massive brain fog and exhaustion and massive aching in their bones and gut dysfunction and constipation and diarrhea and hair falling out and thyroid problems and adrenal problems and autoimmune problems, and a lot of them stem from heavy metal toxicity. I can tell you that I had horrible heavy metal toxicity years and years ago, and it was frying my brain. I couldn't think, I was functioning day to day, but barely. And getting on the proper and safe way to detoxify heavy metals, I got my life back in a matter of months, not years. And so I do think, though, that it is very important for people to understand that when you go into this heavy metal detoxification, this is not going to be finished in a month or 2 or 3 or 4. It could take a year. It could take 2 years. I take a look at those numbers on your test and I make a determination of how long and how persistent you have to be in order to get these metals out of your system. They don't go easily. Okay? They don't. It's not easy to get heavy metals out of your brain. And genetically, there are people that are more predisposed to attract and collect heavy metals than, and there are others that they're exposed to heavy metals, their system can get it out. And they're exposed and they can get it out. And other people are like, nah, 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 nah. I mean, it just sticks to you, And so you have to really understand those genetics. And that is one of the things that is an expertise of mine, is looking at your genetics and doing specific genetic tests that will tell you what is going on, phase 1, phase 2, liver detoxification, etc., etc. So that is it for this evening. It's a shorter webinar. I hope you've really gotten a lot out of it. Once again, if you have any questions, if you're a patient of mine and you have any questions, please feel free to call me once again at Lotus East West Medical Center, 310-828-8258. I hope that you've enjoyed the evening. It's always lovely to spend time with all of you, and I'll see you next month. Bye.